Hi there. So today we've got another edition of Five Ways Wednesday, except we're coming from location here at Lake Michigan, along the beautiful beaches of western Michigan, here the eastern part of Lake Michigan. Today's Five Ways Wednesday are 5 ways to talk to your kids about science while at the beach. First one, most obvious, the sand. When we think about sand, rarely do we think about what sand is. And if you simply bring a very simple magnifying glass, you can take a look at the individual particles, the very small pieces of rock, stone, and often glass and seashells that make up sand. So by simply inviting a little bit of curiosity with a magnifying glass, you get a little bit of idea about what sand is. Next, we could talk about waves. Now, here on Lake Michigan, a day like today, the waves aren't that big. In fact, they're registered only about 1 foot tall. But if you come out here on days when there's a storm, or if you're at the ocean, waves can be quite a bit bigger. And when kids think about waves, they oftentimes think that waves move from one place to another, or rather, waves move objects from one place to another. And while that's true near the shore, out further, out into the ocean or into a great lake like this, the waves merely just go up and down. They don't actually push objects. Now, the waves themselves move, but the objects don't move. And you can test that by throwing a stick out or something like that and kind of seeing how that works. Next, let's take it back to sand again. Everybody loves to build sand castles. Now, one thing about sand castles is they're much better when the sand is wet. And the reason that works, and it goes back to what we know about the small particles of sand, is because when they're wet, that water, that moisture actually acts like a bridge between one grain to another, to add a little bit of surface tension between those grains of sand. And that's why if you're going to build a sand castle, it really needs to be out of wet sand, because that moisture makes those sand particles stick together. Now, one of the great things about coming to the beach is the wind. Now, often we can see people who are flying kites, but it looks like we don't have any kites flying today. But knowing a little bit about the wind and how the wind moves from an area of high pressure to low pressure, moving onshore one part of the day and then offshore during another part of the day, you can have that conversation with your kids about wind. And then finally, number 5, sea creatures, wildlife, whatever sort of animals you might be able to find. Now, around here, most often we'll find gulls, not seagulls. There's no such thing as a seagull. They're simply gulls. Now, we have most commonly ring-billed gulls, or black-tipped gulls, where the ends of their wings are black. But there's no such thing as a seagull, so we can kind of have that conversation. You might find shells from crabs or clams, or around here we've got a lot of zebra mussels that are an invasive species in Lake Michigan. You'll find those remnants. Certainly along the ocean you can find other types of exotic animals. So anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed today's edition of 5 Ways Wednesday here from the beautiful shores of Lake Michigan.